When working on a project in Audacity, you have the ability to record or import multiple tracks. This allows you to combine multiple audio files together while being able to adjust the volume level of each track individually to create a mix. Now in the previous video, I recorded a short bit of audio onto this first track. It's the intro to a podcast I'm creating. In fact, I'm going to click the track name, which currently says audio track. I'll choose name, and I'll just change this to intro. And you can see the name has changed up here. When you're working with multiple tracks, you'll definitely want to give your tracks good, understandable names so you can tell them apart. Now to record a second track, it's simply a matter of hitting the record button again. When I do so, Audacity will automatically create a new track and start recording from wherever my playhead currently is. You can see my playhead is actually at the very end of this first clip. You can tell by the little gray arrow here and when I roll over this area here. So when I click record, you can see it starts recording from where the playhead was. Let me undo that. So if I place the playhead back at the very beginning of the track, and then hit record, you can see it starts recording from the beginning. Hello, and welcome to the Video Learning Podcast. And I can hear the first track simultaneously as I'm recording the second track. Now this might be the behavior you want if you're, say, recording music. Maybe your first track is an instrument like a guitar, and you want to sing a vocal over the second track. In that case, it makes perfect sense to record from the beginning and have two tracks overlap. But in this case, both are speaking tracks, and I don't want an overlap. I want this next recording to come after the first one ends. So I'm going to undo that again. Now you may be wondering at this point, why not just record onto the same track? Now I could do so by holding Shift when I click record. Notice that tells me that Shift-R gives me an append record. So I'll click, and you can see it starts recording onto the same track at the very end of that first clip. Stop that. And now I actually have two clips on the same track. And you very well may want to do this if you're recording, say, a long monologue, and you want everything to be on one track. But for my podcast, I like having each section as its own track. That gives me more freedom to play around with the pacing and arrangement of the sections. It allows me to change my mind more easily if I decide I want the first segment of the show to be the last instead, for example. So again, I'm going to undo what I just recorded. And by the way, you do have virtually unlimited undos on Audacity, so you can always go back to a previous edit as long as you haven't closed the file. And just as a quick sidebar here, if you go to View, History, you'll see a list of everything you've done in the project so far and how many steps you've performed. So you can see here the last thing I did was I renamed the audio track to intro, I deleted a track, I recorded audio, and on and on and on. Now notice here it says undo levels available 7. That means I've done 7 steps that I could actually go back and jump back to. For instance, I could go all the way back to when I first just created the new project and hadn't recorded anything yet. At that point I have 0 undo levels available. I definitely don't want to do that in this case. I'll just jump back down to this part. But this can be really convenient if you want to go way back, and instead of hitting undo multiple times, you can just look for the point you want and click it to jump back to it and undo everything that came after it. I'll just click OK for now. All right, I'm going to make sure my playhead is at the end of this first track. So now when I click record, Audacity will create a new track and start recording my new clip from where the playhead is. This week, Canon announced an update to their line of PowerShot point-and-shoot cameras. The new models feature built-in Wi-Fi, allowing you to upload your photos to Facebook or Twitter directly from the camera, or even to share them between other Wi-Fi-enabled PowerShot cameras. The cameras also now shoot at full 1080p HD video with stereo sound, and allow you to zoom while recording, a feature that was missing in previous versions. And you can of course upload your movies directly to YouTube over a Wi-Fi connection. Alright, so there's my second track. There's really nothing to it. I'm going to click the Fit in Window button here, so we can see both clips in their entirety. And if I click in the timeline here a little before the end of the first clip, I can listen to see how they flow together. Photography this week. I'll go back a little. What's been happening in the world of digital photography this week? This week, Canon announced an update to their line of PowerShot point-and-shoot cameras. The new models feature a built-in, and again, it's a personal preference, but I like putting each segment onto separate tracks. This allows me to do things like grab this tool here, called the Time Shift tool, and then drag the clips around to play with their timing. So if I wanted a little bit less of a pause here between the intro and the second segment, I just need to drag this clip a little bit to the left. And then I can listen to hear how that sounds. But first, let's see what's been happening in the world of digital photography this week. This week, Canon announced an update to their line. And if I think that's a little too quick, I can just drag it back a little bit to the right. So recording additional tracks is really just a matter of placing the playhead where you want to start recording and then hitting the record button. Of course, your additional tracks probably won't always be recorded from scratch. You can import existing tracks as well. In the exercise files folder, I have a clip called music_bed, and I want it to act as the background music for my intro. So I'll go to File, Import Audio. I'll go into my exercise files into Chapter 2, and here's music_bed, and I'll open that. Again, I have the option of copying the file into my project or using it where it is. I prefer copying the files in because that way everything related to my project stays in the project's data folder, and I don't have to worry about having files spread out all over the place. I'll click OK. And you can see by the two waveforms that this is a stereo file. And we can also tell just by looking at this that the music is way louder than my voiceover tracks. So I'm going to drag its gain slider here to the left so we can bring the volume down a bit. That way we'll be able to hear the other two tracks over the music. So let's jump back to the beginning and see how this sounds. Hello and welcome to the Video Learning Podcast. I'm Garrick Chow and this is episode 105. As usual, we have an incredibly diverse collection of tutorials that were released this week, including courses on typography. Alright, so that's multi-track recording. And remember, if necessary, if you want to see more of your tracks, you can adjust their height by placing your cursor between the tracks to adjust their height. And again, once you have a project created in Audacity, it's just a matter of recording or importing additional tracks. Now, we definitely need to do some editing and mixing here, but we'll look at how to do that in the upcoming chapters. For now, I'm going to make sure to save my project, and we'll move on.